Okay, guys, we're back for another week, and real excited this week. This week is game week for us, so 8 months of work come down to get going this week. So real excited, but I wanted to get with you and bring to you this presentation this week. We're going to talk a little bit about site visits here this week, and site visits are probably the single best opportunity, learning opportunity that you can take as a strength coach. You will get so much out of site visits that you'll use for your entire career. As long as you do what we're about to talk about, as long as you take a ton of notes, you take pictures, you do all the types of things that you can, you will look back at these site visit notes for your entire career. And there's a Chinese proverb that basically states that sitting across the table from a wise man for an hour is as good as reading books for a month, and there's some truth in that statement. I'm an avid reader, but at the same time, I try to take a couple different site visits every year, and I will get a ton out of those site visits, every bit as much as going to any conference or reading any book. And so, one of the things I started doing early on in my career was taking these site visits, setting them up and doing them on my own. But I wanted to make sure that I had clear objectives for what I wanted to accomplish when I went on these visits. And so what you'll basically seeing on the screen is what I set up when I take our site visits, still currently, as well as back several years ago when I was first getting in the field. And this is a site visit I took to LSU. But let's talk a little bit about protocol. When you're setting these site visits up, obviously the time demands of a strength and conditioning coach are extremely challenging, and so you want to try to maintain those visits in ideal times. And so during the season, either Monday may be a day off for teams if they practice on Sunday, or Fridays on home games are typically you usually can get a hold of somebody. In the off season, Wednesdays typically, if they're on a 4-day split, are pretty good days, and then in the summer, Wednesdays typically as well. So if you're calling strength coaches, emailing strength coaches, and you're trying to set those up, you might suggest that in your email, just simply saying, hey, look, I know you're extremely busy. Just want an hour of your time. Can I come and visit with you and talk to you a little bit about strength and conditioning and how you got set up and going in this field, and suggest those times because that's the opportune time for them. But I typically take a site visit trip on spring break. I usually team up with some friends in the field. Matt Bayless at Mississippi State is a good friend of mine, and we took a trip up to Michigan, and hit Michigan State, Detroit Lions, and had a great visit up there. We try to knock out as many places as we can in one trip now, just to knock out to get as much crammed in there as we possibly can. But for each of those visits, I will do one of these reports, and typically I'll go ahead and turn it into the head coach just to show that hey, look, I'm working, I'm continuing to try to get better here, and so one of the things that will happen when you're a young strength coach is you'll get the coaches come downstairs. Well, what is LSU doing, or what's Oklahoma doing, or what's some of the premier programs in the country? What are they doing? Well, if you've gone and you visited them and you've gotten it written down, then you can pull that out and speak intelligently about it. If not, you're just guessing. So when you set these site visits up, very important that you are very respectful of their time, that you don't bombard them with emails and you don't bombard them with phone calls, but you also you try to set something up. And so sometimes it's you may benefit from going through an assistant and trying to set up something with an assistant or a graduate assistant at one of those facilities, and then hoping that you can run into the head person as well while you're there. but you'll get more out of, like I said, just walking through a weight room um, than almost going to an entire presentation at a conference. So that being said, what you have in front of you is a site visit that I conducted when I was, um, I guess this is back in 2007. We went up to LSU. One of the things that I did is I jumped on with our coaches. Our coaches typically take a trip each year, and they'll go visit a facility. So our offensive staff was going up to LSU to kind of clinic with them. Our defensive staff, I think, went to the Indianapolis Colts that year. And I just asked if I could jump in with the offensive staff and go to LSU, and it worked out. So I was actually there for 2 to 3 days, I think, at that time. We got a ton of information from Coach Moffitt, and he's a phenomenal strength coach, phenomenal guy, and had a great visit with him. But one of the first things that you're going to want to talk to him about is just overall philosophy. You know, strength coaches, they'll talk philosophy all day long if you let them. And you know, that's one of the main things that I want to try to get accomplished. What do we want to find out from a philosophy standpoint in terms of goals and principles? You know, it helps you when you're writing your manual and things along those lines to have these types of well thought out goals and objectives. And so you can see what LSU did, you know, to increase performance through smart, well-planned strength and conditioning programs, to increase and maintain level of dynamic flexibility, to increase your level of functional strength and power. You know, all these things are great buzzwords, um, objectives that, you know, are good to regurgitate back to coaches on interviews, to regurgitate back in manuals to your athletes, and to keep yourself grounded. Principles, we'll have a later presentation about being principle based, but I can't say enough about having some clear, concrete principles in your program and making sure that that you're holding yourself accountable to that. Another thing I ask typically is what makes their program unique. You know, they have a GA situation up there, which is pretty neat. They do a point system that was pretty cool, and we got some good ideas for our winter competition from that. They include academics, and then they used to do karate, but the NCAA did not allow them. It does not allow that any longer. But they used to do some karate. So I'll typically ask a strength coach, you know, because everybody's about the same. But, you know, they all train and care about their athletes and all that. Well, I'll typically ask them what separates them, what's different about their program than anywhere else I'll go. And you'll usually that's when you get some of the great nuggets that you'll walk away from. The next thing that you want to try to do while you're there is you want to make sure you observe a training session. If you can pull that off. Now it's very difficult for me because if they're training, we're typically training. But if I get the opportunity to go watch a training session, I'm jumping on that. I practice. Anything that I can do, I want to try to watch as much as possible. You want to watch, you know, if you can watch a practice, watch the pre-practice, watch the pre-lift. What are they doing? What's their warm-up? What are they doing for flexibility? What are they doing for resistance training? How's it broken down? Is it a 3-day routine? Is it a 4-day routine? One of the things that's neat about LSU is they do a 3-day kind of conjugate periodization plan. Kind of like the Gale Hatch system, and so it's kind of neat to see how they set that up. You may end up walking into a situation where the head coach wants you to lift 3 days a week. Maybe if you're a 3-day-a-week guy, if you're an intern at LSU, and then you turn around and you have to go work 4 days a week, how are you going to do that? It's good to have some ideas. What's the progression? The periodized base progression. What's the volume? They do 8 to 10 lifts per workout. They do 20 to 30 total sets. These are the core lifts. What are the considerations for position specific? Do they have any sports specific exercises? This is really good when you go and you try to make some things unique for your athletes. If they do some neat drills, it's kind of like a coach, a football coach. You see some pretty cool drills, your mind starts working, and you see how you can use that into maybe your off-season strength, your conditioning program. Is there any conditioning that's performed and what it is, you know. And then what we try to do is we start getting into, I work predominantly with football, but this could be any sport, get into the training phases, in the summer, how many guys are training, at LSU, they got the whole team. It's great. They got all their scholarship kids there, and then most of the walk-ons will be there if they want to be there on the team. How many trays are they lifting? They're lifting threes. What are their times? Scheduling. I can't tell you how critical this is to get some good ideas and great ideas from coaches that have already gone through every possible scenario. Um, how can we set up this lifting schedule so it's beneficial for the athletes, but it's also manageable for the staff. And so they go at 7:30 to 9, at 9 to 10:30, at 10:30 to 12, at 12 to 1:30, at 1:30 to 3, and at 3 to 4:30. It's a pretty long day, but that's what works for them and their class schedules and their coaching staff. You get some coaches, they have one lift time, they got the entire team in there. You got some that have a lift group every hour on the hour. It just kind of depends, but kind of getting the logic behind what they're doing and when they're doing it and why they're doing it is fantastic. How's the lifting split up? It's an undulating periodization program. How many conditioning days? In the summer they run 4. What are their conditioning times? So, they go Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7:30 and 4. What kind of conditioning they do? They do 110. That's their big test. They start with 26 and they drop to 16 if they make their time. If not, decrease to 25. We just switched over. We had a coaching change, and we do the 110 test now. Wasn't familiar with it, so being able to call Tommy and get their conditioning protocols and their times and all those types of things, the testing protocols, was a huge benefit to me, and that wouldn't have happened if I didn't make this have this relationship built up with him over the last several years. They do speed improvement on Tuesdays, and they do agility and changes of direction on Thursdays, and then Fridays they do gas drills and interval sprints. What do they do for 7-on-7 now? As strength coaches, we don't have we have nothing to do with 7-on-7, but helping to kind of fit that into the overall plan from a scheduling standpoint, letting those guys know when would be opportune times. That always works well, and so they do theirs on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and on Wednesdays the receivers and quarterbacks do some stuff. Compliance, any compliance issues, just when do they report, and basically when they can start in May. Talk a little bit about training camp, so you got summer, you go into training camp, number of lift days, lift times after practice, how is it set up, same thing, conditioning days, conditioning times, what type of conditioning is done. They do perfect sprints there. One group goes to the weight room, one group goes to the pool. We did something very similar to this year. So getting some good ideas on just how some other people do it. So when you're sitting in a staff meeting and coach says, hey, what would you want to do? Well, this sounds pretty good to me. One group goes in and lifts, one goes to the pool and gets a recovery. That's a pretty good idea. And so that that helps to have some ideas and be able to regurgitate that information. From training camp, we get into end season. What's the practice schedule? They usually do 24 5-minute periods. So that's 2 hour. That's a 2-hour practice. During the season, they lift twice a week. Varsity lifts twice a week. They do an optional running on Sunday at 5. And then they go Sunday a lift or Monday, and then they do Thursday at those same times. Freshmen, Sunday at 5. They do the Thursday in-season schedule, and they come in on a third day on Friday. Same type of setup. It's more of a total body type of routine. Number of conditioning days. Conditioning times. What the conditioning's done. What's his role at practice. And then game day and travel responsibilities. During the bowl season, back when I started doing this, I had no idea, we'd even go to a bowl. We've gone to 5 straight bowls now. So, just knowing what they're doing for that, being able to set that up. Winter is important as well. see how I can pause this. All right, guys, we're back. I had to pause there for a second, but we were talking about the winter, and in the winter, same protocols. Number of lift days, how many lift times do they work, what days do they work, what times do they go, how's it set up, what the conditioning times are, what do they do for 7-on-7, any compliance issues. One of the things that was unique about Louisiana is that they have a Mardi Gras week, and that they get off of school for that. Role in recruiting. During winter, you start recruiting. You have recruiting visits. You have some in the fall as well, but more they pick up quite a bit in the spring there, in the winter sessions. And what's your role in it? You get a tour of them. You meet with each recruit individually. Also during the winter, you got pro timing day. What are some things there? If you're going to be a head strength coach, you're going to run a pro timing day, and you need to know how to have that set up. And so they do some unique things there. They had the NFL Networker there. They had the Spark came in and administered it as opposed to them or the scouts. They had some banners made up. They had a video camera at each test. They had some pretty neat things set up. That was probably one of the better pro days that I've been to. They also have walk-on tryouts during that time. So how do they handle walk-on tryouts? Who sets it up? Their director of football ops runs it, not the strength coach. Getting into spring ball, again, similar protocols. No number of lift days, lift times, how's it set up, conditioning times. And then from there, after you talked about the year, essentially, after you've gone through a year, and then you start getting into more of administrative type stuff, and so we start talking a little bit about supervision, how many full-time staff members, how many graduate assistants, how many interns are involved, how do they monitor that, there players are assigned to a specific strength coach, injured players go with the head strength coach. Walk-ons go with the interns. That's just how they do it. What's their workout card look like? I try to get examples. Anything they give me, I jump on. If I can get a copy of a workout card, an off-season manual, if I can take pictures of quotes and signs and anything like that, I'm gonna jump on all that. But they do a 3-day card. It's 3 days printed to one sheet, and they just use Excel, for a computer program. Testing and evaluation. When do they test? They test in the fall and spring. They don't test after the season. We test after the season. I like to know where our guys are at. How the testing results reported. They just send it to a basic spreadsheet to the coaches. What's included in the testing report. What do they let in on? What's tested? During the fall they do a 1 to 3 rep bench max. They do 16 110s. They do 10 40s. In the spring they test vertical jump, long jump. They test clean, squat, bench. They do the 40. They test the 20-yard shuttle, and they do the 3-cone agility. I always like to make sure that I talk to them a little bit about their nutrition. What are they doing in terms of nutrition? General guidelines. It's listed in their summer manual. They gave me a summer manual, so I was able to kind of go back and get that information. What do they do for overweight and underweight situations? What's their budget? Last year they spent about $90,000. That's pretty good information to know when I'm trying to get our supplement budget up. What supplements do they use? They use Muscle Milk and Metrics Collegiate Series and some of these other supplements. They really like this Naked Juice that was loaded with some antioxidants. And they have a nutrition counter that's in their weight room that I took some pictures of. They kind of gave me some thoughts for our nutrition counter here. So some really good stuff there. Training table, they're required to eat 1 meal on campus. Weight issues are forced to eat on campus, period. Dietitians, they have 1. Again, all this information, you may not need this information necessarily right now in your current role, but when you become a head strength coach, all this information is power, especially when you're sitting down and you're talking with coaches and administrators. Like to always talk a little bit about speed development. Where is it incorporated in the training cycle? What's the progression? Also want to talk to them a little bit about how they handle injuries and what the relationship's like with sports medicine staff. I thought that they did something really unique there, where the head strength coach works out with the injured guys. We do something similar to that here with our guys. Motivation. I love anything motivation wise, and so I'm always taking pictures. But they at that time, they used an iPod shuffle, which I thought was pretty unique at the time. Now it's not so not so unique, but that was some no commercials and all that type of stuff, and that was a good call, and they got to listen to what they want to listen to. Discipline, methods, they run that point system. And so I went in and basically wrote out the point system, which I thought was great stuff, and so, if they have 2 points, they run a standard punishment with a coach, designated coach 6 a.m., 3 points, they double that, and just go on down the line. How are the expectations communicated? They go through a goal setting session. I asked him about that, and he elaborated a little bit more on that. Budget, it's virtually unlimited for them. It's LSU, but really, it's that they have to justify what they use. Staff development, what do they do in terms of staff development? Again, right now you probably don't have a staff, but you will. And know what people do for continuing education. They don't really do anything. They do have a staff manual that outlines the philosophy. What do they do for vacation policy? He takes spring break the week after the bowl game, the week before the season, and then 2 weeks in May. Pretty good to have that laid out ahead of time. Meeting times, as a staff, they meet at the beginning of the semester, and they have to demonstrate all the lists to the entire staff. And then they meet as needed. Planning and personal development. So you get into some of the things that people will do for their own personal development. Planning, program is mostly in place with minor changes made during the training period. So that, he's been there quite some time. He's been doing this for a long time, so he knows what works. He knows what works for him. He just makes minor changes from phase to phase. From a personal development standpoint, he goes to the Senior Bowl each year. He feels like he's able to get these site visits kind of conducted there, where there's a lot of strength coaches. Goes to the NFL Combine, same thing. Gets it to run into a lot of people. Speaks with several old strength coaches, and then he gave me some recommendations. I always ask for reading material. I love to read, and this is he gave a couple of suggestions there. A lot of Soviet Union, Eastern Bloc type stuff. And then facilities, this is one of those things that's as many pictures as you can take of facilities, because again, you're going to start to rearrange weight rooms. You're going to be asked by coaches about what would be the ideal practice field setup and all these kinds of crazy things. And if you've not seen these things or have any idea, then you don't have any kind of opinion. But if all of a sudden you do have an opinion and you have some pictures and things like that, you become a great resource for the coaching staff. So LSU, this is their facility. It's a phenomenal facility. They got they have an indoor right here. They have 4 practice fields, a 5th one over here actually. They have the weight room. This is their offices. Their weight room is in the back corner right here. So it's pretty phenomenal facility. Picture their indoor weight room. They have 10,000 square foot weight room, team meeting room. All these things are great stuff to have. And I just pulled some of these off at the time to give to the head coach. But I have all these in a file on my iPhoto of all the pictures I took while I was there. But having those pictures, again, allow you to really see some, just have some, when you're trying to set things up, or you might see something of a way that they got their rack set up. We started putting our physio balls above our rack because I saw that in a picture somewhere, and I thought that was a great idea from a storage solution. So you never know what you're going to get from those pictures, so take as many as you can. But, the best thing, like I said, is when you get done with your site visit, if you go in with something like this, and what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll delete all this information so you have a blank strength and conditioning site visit form, and you can use this form, but go and set up those visits. Use a form, come up with what your goals and what your objectives of that site visit is, and then go in there and don't sit there with this sheet and go verbatim but go in there ahead of time, look over it, and start asking questions and take notes. And then as you go back, you can fill this information in. And what that does is when you're missing when you're missing information. So say you get down to end season and you're missing what the practice schedule was. Well, that's a phone conversation. That's now that you've established a relationship. That's a quick email. Hey, Coach Moffitt, one of the things I forgot to ask you about was your practice schedule. How many periods do you typically have? How many days a week do you lift during the season? And that's keeping you in front of them. But it's also you asking intelligent questions. If somebody comes and visits me like this, and they come prepared, and they have lots of great questions, and they have some clear objectives of what they want to accomplish, that person stands out to me. Versus the person that just comes in and just kind of letting you lead them. Well, I got too much going on in my day for me to go lead somebody through, and what they need to know, or what they should be asking. I'll let that conversation fizzle out really quick and let them, go back out the door. Hey, take a tour, take a walk through the weight room. We'll see you later. I try to spend as much time as I can, but you just don't have a whole lot of time. But if you have some clear things set up, and the head strength coach walks away, then you go on and you're asking the assistant these questions, and you're filling in the information, and everybody feels like, hey, you know what, this guy's really asking some good questions. He really wants to be a strength coach, and if you can leave that impression on somebody, that's huge. That's going to help you down the line. Very important, like I said, that you follow up with these coaches, and that you make sure you thank them for their time. Ask that you can continue to stay in touch with them, and prior to leaving, you should always ask. It's not the first question you ask, but prior to leaving, you should always ask about potential opportunities. If you're an intern, when do you see some possible GA jobs opening up? If you're a GA, when do you see some potential assistant positions opening up? Or what would be the process for me to try to get, on your short list for an assistant position? And any recommendations that they have, things that they feel like you need to do, leave them with a resume. But then anything that you feel like they feel that you need to do to potentially get on their short list. So hopefully that works for you. This is this was LSU site visits. I got hundreds of these that I've taken, and I think that you will benefit from this, but you will tremendously benefit from going and taking those visits. So until next time, thanks.